Hey, welcome back, rankers. So, yes, I'm recording from home again because what usually happens is on a Tuesday afternoon I record the show, which I did yesterday. And then I come home and I edit and upload and write the blog post on a Tuesday night. And so it's all, then I'm sending it out Wednesday morning. Anyway, got home last night and the file had corrupted. So I've actually re-recorded already again this morning, and then audio didn't work. So this is the third time. Anyway, so sorry it's late today, but that's why it happens. I caught up with Darren Rouse yesterday, pro blogger, and we did a recording session for Beers, Blokes and Business, one of Australia's leading podcasts for business. And he's always interesting, but one of the interesting things that he said was that some of his most popular posts, blog posts, are about mistakes, mistakes people make, top 10 mistakes. So I thought, I haven't done one of those forever. So I thought, it's a good time to have a look at the top 10 SEO mistakes. So I went out and asked staff yesterday, I said, what are your top mistakes that you're seeing from clients that, or new clients that we bring on board? So these are them. First of all, backlinks, obviously, right? Don't go and buy backlinks. One of the first things that we do for most clients is put a disavow process in place, which is basically going and saying to Google, ignore all of these backlinks. And that can be for a couple of reasons. That could be because someone's had a red hot go in the past of thinking, hey, this is SEO, it's just as easy, we'll just go and buy backlinks. Or it is a competitor doing some negative SEO and trying to get a whole heap of negative backlinks to bring you down. So don't go and buy backlinks. Number two is H1s. That says actually H1. It's a dumb font I'm using, it, not H-I's. So H1s. So a lot of SEOs even will say, H1s don't work, heading 1s don't work. Well, they actually do, because good document structure. So heading 1 basically says to a robot or anything else, this is the heading of this document. This is the heading of this article. This is important. And a lot of developers will use them as design tools or design functions. Well, they'll say, if you're going to use a H1, make sure it looks like this, make sure it looks really pretty and nice, and use it on the menu item over here, and use it up on the navigation. But don't use it for the document. Use it for the document. Don't use it for formatting. Okay, the same applies to H2s, of course. So yeah, use H1s, or they'll use a H1 in a counterintuitive way. So I've just seen a bird out my window and I don't know what it is, and it's driving me nuts, and I very rarely see it. I'm just going to go and grab, no, I'm not. I want to go and grab the camera to see what it is, but it doesn't matter. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, H1s. Use H1s. 3, duplication. So duplication in a number of different areas. It can be in page titles, which is quite common, which is bad, because a page title is the first thing that a search engine will see when it comes to a site or a document. And by duplicating that across, different pages on your site, you're basically saying you don't care, right? You're basically saying to the robots, whatever. You need to make sure you don't have duplicate page titles. That's the first piece of duplication you can check. And it's really easy to check quickly by going into Google Webmaster Tools and looking under HTML suggestions and seeing if there are any duplicate page titles there. And it's really, you can get a massive bump in your rankings just by fixing your duplication in your page titles. The other area of duplication, of course, which is very common, is content duplication, where you'll have one piece of content available at multiple different addresses throughout the site. So, for instance, it might be a large retail site. You might have the same piece of content, available in a different category or a different search function, and you'll have the product come up, and in a search, and the user will click on that product, or the robot will follow that search, and that product will come up at a URL that is very different to the product URL. One of the easy ways that you can fix duplication in that instance is by using canonical tagging, and canonical tagging will tell the search engines that, hey, this is just another version of that page over there. But yeah, fix duplication. An easy way you can find out if you've got duplication is obviously going to HTML suggestions in Google Webmaster Tools, or you can just do a search, which is site : and then your web address, and it will bring up all the pages that Google has crawled. Now, if you've got a lot in there that you go, what the hell is that doing in there? Then you'll know that you've got some duplication. Really easy way to find it. This one is not strictly a SEO thing, but a call to action. Having a strong call to action is really important. And it's one thing getting the people there, but if you've got nothing to do for once they're there, then what's the point? For us, it's about getting people to either fill out the form or pick up the phone. For a retailer, obviously, it's about making a sale, making the transaction. But for most people, it's about the phone. So some of the things that you can help with call to action are things like just some of these chat services that are out there that you can use really help call to action. We're going to be putting one on our new site, which is launching in a couple of weeks. And there's some other really simple stuff that you can do for call to action. Like, I don't know how many times you've been to a retailer site and you can't find the buy button. That is just so annoying. Or you can't find the checkout button. That is just so annoying. So there's some easy things that you can do for call to action. In fact, one of the ones that it drives me nuts every time I go to use it, because I don't use it that often, is Amazon. Now I know, hey, they're going okay, right? But trying to find the buy button for me is always hard. And maybe I'm dumb. But yeah, call to action. Have a strong call to action. This is a new one that's been emerging recently, Magento. So Magento is a content management system used in e-commerce installations. It's owned by eBay. It's one of the most popular e-commerce systems out there. Quite complex, quite cumbersome to use, but quite good, which is why it's used by a lot of people. And it's open source as well, which is great. One of the problems associated with it, though, or it's more user error than it is a problem with Magento, I guess you'd say, is that it's got some defaults in it that a lot of people don't realise that are there. So, for instance, you should only have one domain for your site. Like for us, it's stuartmedia.biz. We've got www.stuartmedia.biz, but that redirects to stuartmedia.biz. We've got stuartmedia.com.au, but that redirects to stuartmedia.biz. We've got www.stuartmedia. Anyway, you get the idea, right? But they all redirect. And quite frankly, I don't have enough time for W's in my life. W's, why? It's extra ink, everything. Anyway, so what Magento does, though, is that if we were a retailer site, we had a Magento install. If someone typed in www.stuartmedia.biz, they would end up at stuartmedia.biz. Great, no problem. However, if someone typed in www.stuartmedia.biz/product, they would also end up at stuartmedia.biz. So that's not good, because what Magento is doing in that situation, it's just taking everything like a wildcard. If someone types in something at this other domain, or if someone links to you at this other domain to a URL deep in your site, it's going to redirect everything to the home page. That's bad. So what you want to do is make sure that those defaults are not switched on and that you're redirecting everything to its equivalent page, not the home page of the other domain. No goal measurement, strictly again, not SEO, but really important. And that bird's out there again. There's two of them now. Anyway, so goal measurement, really easy to set up in Google Analytics. And all you have to do is, you don't even have to be a techie to do this. It's basically very simple. Just go into Google Analytics and have a look at goals under the admin section. But it's so important, right? So if it might be as simple as, I want people to spend X amount of time on this page, or I want people to obviously fill out this form, or there's some other transaction. For retailers, it's easy. If you're a B2B, have a think about what it is that you want the goal to be, and make sure it's easy to do. Sometimes you're so close to your website, you don't realize that it's actually difficult to do that thing that you want people to do. Disabling products. Oh my God. So many times on e-commerce sites we see this going on, and it's a biggie. And if you're an online retailer, make sure you're not doing this. So basically, disabling product, if it's discontinued, if it's out of stock, if for whatever other reason, basically what it does is just breaks the link, it just switches it off. So if anybody's linked to that product externally, number one, you lose the backlink flood for that because it's now a 404, it's a broken link. If Google comes along and, because it had been to that page before and it's not there, all of a sudden Google sees you've got a 404. And, you'll have some people say, oh, Google doesn't really care about 404. And they've said that several times. But I can tell you this right now, Google might say that, but half the time I reckon Googlers don't know how the algorithm is going to react to any given circumstance. And I've got proof of that. And, well, I can tell you is that when we go in and fix up a lot of 404s on a site, you immediately get a ranking boost. So make sure that if you're going to have a product out of stock, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can say, hey, this is currently out of stock. Do you want us to let you know when it's back in stock? It's a good user experience, right? Rather than just getting to, oh, bang, broken, that product doesn't exist anymore. Or you could say, hey, there's an equivalent product, redirect over here. So it's a new model, redirect to the new model. Don't just switch things off. So there's a number of different ways you can handle it, and you don't want to have a site full of 404s because number one rule, it's a bad user experience, so don't do it. No meta descriptions. Once again, doesn't really have an impact on SEO, but will have an impact on your traffic, or can have an impact on your traffic. And to give you an example of this, a landing page, a product page, something like that, if you have an empty meta description, Google's always going to just take a little bit of text off the page. Now, it might be difficult in an e-commerce site for Google to do that. It might just sort of get specifications or something. So when it appears in the search results, you get this sort of weird search result, and it's not really clear what that thing is. This is your call to action area, right? So for us, a lot of the time we'll put our phone number in the meta description, stuff like that. If it's a blog post, if it's an article, if it's something like that, don't worry about your meta description. You don't have to. It's really for those pages that are landing pages. For those other things, Google will just take a snippet, and that's usually okay. But it's your product pages and those sorts of things, or your landing pages, where you don't necessarily want Google to do that. You want to control that. You want to control. That's your sales pitch in the search results. Number 9, this is a biggie, not controlling Google. So I was saying to someone yesterday that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and then I realized, well, actually, that's not true. So to give you an idea of controlling Google, one of the big ones that we see often, and this happened for a client a few days ago, actually, where the developer had built a staging site at a subdomain of their own site. And they built this site to say, hey, have a look at this client. Isn't this a great site that we're building for you? Problem is that Google came along and found that site and crawled it and everything. And they hadn't controlled Google. They hadn't said, Google, you're not allowed in here. And the developer said to us, well, we didn't put a link up anywhere that Google could find that. Google's going to find it, okay? I don't care where you've got it hidden. Unless you've got it password protected, some will say, hey, just robots.txt, but we have seen instances where Google has ignored the robot.txt. Not all the time, but it can happen. And you think about it, right? If you don't put a link up anywhere, how on earth is Google going to find that piece of content that you thought wasn't visible to Google? Well, Google has a thing called Gmail, and a lot of people use Gmail, and Google has to crawl your email. It has to know what's in your email to display you relevant advertising. So, yeah, call me a conspiracy theorist, but there are ways that sometimes Google finds content that I don't even think Google knows it's doing. So, control the bot. Also, we've seen in, say, instances or with content management systems like Drupal where it just goes in and finds stuff that you just don't want it to find. I was looking at a site yesterday where Google had gone in and just gone and crawled a bunch of stuff like Shockwave, flash files and text files that it didn't want Google to find. Google will go and find these things. Google will go and crawl an empty directory and say, hey, here's the contents of this directory, if you let it. So you've got to control the bot. An interesting search you can do, if you're so inclined, is to go do site:/gov.au space file type, all as one word, :XLS, and that will give you every Excel file that is on an Australian government website. I did that once, I forget what I was looking for, and I found the list of known terror suspects around the world. I forget which site it was on. I was on ASIO or something. But lots of businesses and organisations will put stuff up on a web server not realising that Google's going to crawl that. It's going to find it. Sometimes you go, how the hell did it find it? I just had it sitting up there. You think you can sit something in your cupboard and Google's not going to come and look at it because it's right at the back where how's anyone going to find that? Google will go through and rummage through that cupboard. It will find it. Another example was I was Googling someone's name and phone number, and because I wanted to find their phone number, obviously. And I found this file, and it was on the Australian the Australian Information Industry Association website, and it was a list of all their members, all their usernames, all their passwords, all their phone numbers, all their email addresses, and it was in a text file just sitting up on their web server, which they didn't realize that Google had crawled. So Google will go and crawl everything it can find. So you've got to lock down tight. You've got to lock down areas of the site that you do not want Google to find. Another thing that can happen, and we saw this the other day, was that Google will go and crawl an iframe or an individual small frame, and it will go and then put that in the index. And if someone hits that, it doesn't have any navigation around it. You can't find your way back to the rest of the site. So the trick is not to let Google do that. Just keep it out. And of course, the number 10 common mistake is using cheap SEO. Now, I'm not saying you have to use us, but if you are going to do SEO, you're going to employ an external agency, get a good one. Because long term, it's going to be less pain for you. Or if you're going to hire and do it do it yourself, make sure you get a good SEO person in house. But don't think that you can just go and get. Don't go for the lowest bidder. It's going to be more pain for you in the long run. Hopefully that's helpful, and we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Bye.